Hey folks, I'm Chris and I'm your Commander Mechanic, here with another Let's Do a Brew. But before we get to it, I want to remind you that we've launched our Patreon. You can find us at patreon.com/cmdrmechanic. We appreciate everybody's support, and we want you to be involved in making this content. Whether it's a shout out or whether it's your direct input, you and your support is valuable to us. Our special guest today in Let's Do a Brew is Tomer from MTG Goldfish. Tomer, thank you for coming out today and welcome to Let's Do a Brew.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. So the audience might know you best from your work with MTG Goldfish, your work on Commander Clash and Budget Commander. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of your shows that we can watch?
All right. Well, I do Budget Commander, which is like my primary thing, where I construct the most powerful deck on a restrictive budget. And I usually try to do various price points. So I'll take a commander and I'll try to do $50, $100, $200 as a general rule. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I will deviate a little bit, but that is the idea, is where I try to break down a deck fully, all the card options available, and then use those card options to construct the best deck, the ideal version of the deck at various price points. Yeah. So that's Budget Commander. And then for Commander Clash, it's me and the rest of the Goldfish crew. Generally speaking, is going to be Richard, Seth, and Krim. And we always play every single Friday night, 11 p.m. Eastern time. We pick a theme and we play a game based on that theme on Magic Online. And usually the theme will dictate heavily how we construct our decks. So if we have like a video game week, we will each build a thematic deck around a video game that we like. We've done so many different themes at this point. Pauper, where we played with just commons, would not recommend. Peasant, where we run with commons and uncommons, really recommend that. I love that one. Viewer submitted decks, viewer submitted play groups, everything. So that's tons of fun. Every single week goes up 11 p.m. Fridays. Really fun.
Amazing. Always entertaining too. I recommend it as a pro watch. It's fantastic to see you and a group of guys that you've been playing with for as long as you have fun in and out every week. It's like watching a home play group.
Yeah, thanks for that. I really enjoy the group, and we always bring guests every once in a while too to mix it up. But like, I'm still waiting for that one day that I'm going to strip mine and commandeer Seth for that one time long ago, years ago at this point, because it's still in my mind.
Yeah, you still have the abacus sitting by, right?
That's what keeps me going, honestly. The abacus remembers, and it's very useful to me.
Awesome. So between those two shows, you're building a lot of decks each week. How many decks do you build each week on a regular basis?
Minimum is 2. Sometimes I will build additional weeks, and also I get a lot of emails. And Twitter messages where people will ask me for opinions on their decks.
Right.
So sometimes they just want to show me, like it will be for like a viewer submitted deck. And then I'll be like, oh, it's sweet. And I'll put it in I have like a folder, a bookmark folder for viewer submitted articles. So if there's like one that really pops up, then I'll put it in there as an option for when we do a viewer submitted week. Right. But many times people just ask me, hey, there's a deck, I need help on cuts, or like this deck is too strong. What can I do? Or this deck is not doing well enough. What can I do? Much like your channel, I would say at this point. So maybe I should just redirect some of my flow that way.
Hey, always happy to help. That is the philosophy of our channel here. We want to help as many people with their decks as possible, and we want to help people become better deck builders. So I definitely think there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah. So I would say minimum 2 each week, and then additionally, I help with people's decks as well.
Awesome. And you build a lot of budget decks, like you mentioned. Do you have a lot of people reaching out saying, Tomer, I built my first commander deck because of your article?
Yeah. Well, every single time I post a video, usually like at least a couple people are going to be considering it. I think the low cost entry cost, which is usually like $50, is enough for people to at least try it out.
Yes.
I'm also interested in starting to add some additional versions of the deck that will be available online on MTGO.
Oh, great.
Because there is a price difference. Some cards on Magic Online are very, very cheap as opposed to their paper version.
Right.
For example, Survival of the Fittest is at least like $100, I think, or it's something expensive in paper, but you can get it for like 40 cents online.
Right.
So there's like versions of the deck that you could build for like 5 online currency dollars.
Yeah.
That are cards that you probably wouldn't be able to, like, most people would not be willing to pay up for the paper version. And so that might interest some people, especially during like quarantine times, where like we're not going out, and no physical papering. If you want to try webcamming, then that's great. But if you want to try with new cards, maybe, or you don't want to deal with webcam stuff, then you could do Magic Online, and maybe some of that would help people as well. So
for sure, I think Gaia's Cradle is another example of one that is completely out of many people's price ranges in paper, but I think it's just a couple of bucks. It might be $10 online too. If you want to play with that, it's much more reasonable to get.
Yeah, the reserve list does not exist online, so there's no issue of like supply not meeting demand. You can just keep getting those cards. So the prices, I think it's like the highest reserve list card is probably like 10 tickets, and that's probably like an underground seat or something.
Right.
But if you get like Commander stuff, it's like 4 tickets maybe for like a Mana Crypt. I don't know. It's not that bad. So highly recommend it. If you're interested in playing with really expensive cards for cheap, try Magic Online.
And how's the Magic Online play community? Do you feel that it's rich, it's populous enough that people can get games when they want games?
So when I queue up during off times, which is like in the middle of the work day, I have to wait a couple minutes, like 5 minutes maybe, for a queue to pop. But if I come off work, like let's say like 6 p.m. Eastern time, it's near instantaneous, and there's like usually like 4 to 8 tables that are running at any time. I can tell you that like we always record Commander Clash at noon, which is like not a time a lot of people are playing Magic, generally speaking, but we always see like 3 tables are already running. So it's not super popular. Like you would think there would be like hundreds of games running on. It's not, but at the same time, you don't actually have to really wait for a game. Like I wait like a couple minutes at most. So it's actually not that bad.
That's great. And it is a great option for people that can't invest in a paper deck. Right now, a lot of people are playing paper Magic via webcam, but those are people that already have decks. Those are people that already play Magic. For people that are just getting into Magic, Magic Online is a great alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not sponsored by Magic Online. By the way, I'm just going to throw it out. Wizards does not sponsor me.
Yeah.
I would love to.
Yeah, Wizards, if you want to sponsor.
Yeah. Give me free stuff. I'll say the best things. But I'm not. So just try Magic Online or don't. Whatever. You're in control of yourself. So.
Fantastic. So you build multiple decks a week. Does that ever lead to burnout on your end? Do you ever just get tired and say, I don't want to build a deck this week. I want to just see if somebody else has built something like that, see if I can tweak and tune an existing list?
Not really. I like building decks. That's kind of what I get excited for. I will say, though, that sometimes when we started doing viewer submitted decks, which was like years ago at this point, because we've been going on for a while. We're like on season 9. The beginning of viewer submitted decks was people were interested in kept sending us decks all the time. But also it's kind of fun to not have to work for a little bit to make it. Like I like making decks. I'm never in a mood where I'm like, I never wake up in a day and I'm like, I don't want to make a deck today. That seems bad. It's like I love making decks, but sometimes like I'm lazy. Yeah. and then if I just have a free deck given to me, that's great. So viewer submitted decks are great in that regard, where like I don't have to build anything, and it's wonderful. Or sometimes like I had to build like there was like a 4-color week or something, and I remember Andrew MCD Mudsta. He has a great channel, highly recommend.
Yes.
He made a Yidris deck that's just really, really cool, and I knew about it, so it's like, you know what, I'm just gonna borrow his deck.
Yeah.
I think it showed up on his channel at some point. I mean, yeah. So I like building stuff. I always like building stuff, but sometimes I'm lazy and I like playing other people's decks.
And there's no problem with that either. Deck building is best when it's collaborative, when you can get input from others, or you can take a base of something that someone else has built and put your own spin on it. That's the entire point behind Commander, is that you can make a deck your own no matter what. And there's no wrong or right way to build a deck. What do you think about the freedom of choice? Is that one of the big things that gets you interested in building decks every week?
What do you mean by freedom of choice?
Well, the fact that you can build a deck any way you want, the fact that you can build around any theme that you'd like. There's no restriction to creativity. There are no lines you have to paint inside of.
Oh yeah, there's no wrong answers in Commander, which I think kind of separates it from more competitive formats. Whereas there's no restriction on how you build, like, let's say, a standard deck. But most of the places we're going to be playing a standard deck is usually in a competitive environment, right? So you're going to take it to an F&M, you're going to take it to a tournament or anything. Pick up games, you can play whatever you like, and there's a little bit more leeway, I would say, in that regard. But if you're bringing a deck to a tournament and it just gets like steamrolled over and over again, that's not so fun. So it kind of feels like there's more of an incentive to build a certain way, a very specific way. But in Commander, it really depends on your play group, right? Like, you just want to build something that matches the rest of your play group that everybody's going to have fun with. And in that way, there's a lot of wiggle room. Like, everybody can bring just like a jank deck that is just like Squirrel Tribal. And that's not wrong. You just play with it and everybody's going to have fun because everybody's on board at the same time. Or you can go like the other way on the spectrum and you can build like the most like competitive deck possible, go full CEDH, and that's not wrong either. Just like you just have to find the right play group for it. So yeah, I totally agree that there's like ultimate freedom in this format because it's not dictated by tournaments, it's dictated by who else you're going to be playing with, and that's just a mutual agreement when you sit down and play.
Yeah, and that is, you know, rule 0. That is, you make the rules for you and your play group. I know that on Command Clash, you've got some house bans. Is that right?
Yes, we have a couple house bans, and they're not for power level concerns. They're more just for viewer experience concerns.
Right. In the end, you are making a show for entertainment purposes. And we've spoken to some other content creators that do the same thing. In the end, they want an entertaining product. So they do rule 0 out some of their own house bans. Can you give an example of something that you might have on that list?
Well, one card we banned, not because I disliked the card, but because it just got a lot of negative reactions from people because it like showed up every single game. It's Cyclonic Rift.
Right.
I don't have a problem with Cyclonic Rift in the format. I don't think it should be banned. And yeah, I know that's kind of a controversial statement in the community because I know there's of the cards that people ask to be banned pretty regularly. I know Cyclonic Rift shows up. I'm in camp, don't ban it. I think it's a fine card.
Right.
However, in our specific situation, in our play group, we noticed that Cyclonic Rift would show up in pretty much every single blue deck, which, I mean, obviously it's a very good card. It's a Nayeth staple in the color. But because it's a staple in the color and because, you know, blue is one of the 5 colors and it's very popular, it showed up in a lot of games. And most of the time when we saw the reaction to Cyclonic Rift the Resolves, people were very negative about it. Right. They were kind of tired of seeing the card over and over again. So because it was played so much, because like so many decks ended up, or so many games ended up having Cyclonic Rift kind of just like change the game flow so much and be such a big swing. And it happened so many times that we were like, you know what? All right, we're going to ban it. Not because I think it's ban worthy. It's because it just was getting very repetitive. It was not a good viewer experience. And that's like the show is supposed to be a good viewer's experience. So we changed that for that reason.
And that's great too. And that's something that a play group can do at home is they can say, you know, this combo pops up every single game to the point where anybody who's playing these colors are playing this combo. It's kind of the arms race or power creep to deck build, right? As soon as a play group discovers a CEDH combo like Food Chain or Thassa's Oracle Demonic Consultation, and it starts being included in every single deck, and you start having games end on turn 3, that's when you really need to step in and say, hey, are we leaning into this power level, or do we want to, put a lid on that and say, let's keep things a little bit more casual?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's totally up to the play group to figure out what's enjoyable for them. Because what I keep having to mention to some people who are like, we can't make our own rules. That'd be crazy. I always try to emphasize the fact that playing a game of Commander is just you sitting with a bunch of friends playing a game together.
Yeah.
And the game itself, it is kind of irrelevant. You could be playing a board game, you can be playing a video game, you could be just chatting. The idea of a social gathering, which is Commander, is to make sure that people are having fun. So if you decide that your games are not having fun because of a specific card, and you can make an easy tweak to make the game more enjoyable for people,
right,
then you should go for it. There's nothing wrong with doing that to enhance your fun, everybody's fun at a social gathering, that's what Commander is. It's just a social gathering.
Absolutely. And some people need to be reminded that Commander as a format started just as friends sitting around a table. And then they wrote down their rules and it was adopted by others. That's how Sheldon and the rules committee started the format. It was their personal format, a way for them to put rules on kitchen table Magic. And now it's the most popular format in Magic, right?
They struck gold with it. I think they had some good ideas there.
Absolutely. And you and I are making names for ourselves based on this format. So
pretty much, yeah. Very thankful for Sheldon and the group for coming up with this format, and Wizards picking up on it, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely. And Wizards really is leaning into it. A lot of the sets that we're seeing come out lately have just been gold mines for Commander. What do you think about some of the recent releases with Ikoria and Commander 2020 and M21 and even Jump Start coming up?
Oh no, you're gonna get me ranting. Oh no. Okay, so I'm gonna be nice and safe here, to not go too long in a tangent. But I will say it's the year of Commander, and Wizards of the Coast is focusing very heavily on Commander products. And every set that releases, I would say it feels like Standard and Draft. Draft is always going to be something that they're going to be building around and making sure it works. The common and uncommon rarities especially. Rares and Mythics, however, I feel like they're leaning very heavily on making it each product, like Ikoria and whatnot, Commander products first, as opposed to Modern or Standard or whatever products first. And while that's really good in some aspects, because we just get more cards as Commander players, I'm very, 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 very worried that the fact that Wizards of the Coast is leaning so hard on making sure that all their sets are highly purchasable and aimed at Commander players as consumers, that they're going to have to push Commander cards further and further to make them more and more appealing to the consumer base, which are now Commander players.
Right.
And I think that's going to cause some issues, especially in terms of power creep, where a lot of previous cards are just going to be quickly obsoleted. And not that you can't play them anymore, but there's going to be a high incentive not to play them anymore, because Wizards of the Coast keeps trying to sell sets based on their Commander appeal, as opposed to a few years ago when it was Standard appeal and Modern appeal and all these other appeals too. But right now it feels like even a Standard set is going to be for Commander players. Commander products are going to be for Commander players, obviously, but Standard sets too, anything is supplemental, is always going to be Commander players first. And I think that's going to causing issues and will continue to cause issues. It's like squeezing the golden goose a little bit too hard.
Right. And we saw a good example of that with the Commander 2020 product, where instead of including Commander cards in a Standard set, they included Standard cards in a Commander set, really showing the flip in their mentality. saying, Commander players, check out these cool standard cards that you can play with. By the way, there are standard formats that you can play.
Well, it's like, hey, you like Commanders, don't you? Well, in these other sets, in other constructor formats, how about Companions? Companions are like Commanders, aren't they? Don't you like that? Maybe you'll like Standard now. Oh no, Companions are ruining all the formats.
Right.
Oops-a-daisy. Maybe we pushed a little bit too hard on our Commander to other formats thingy.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. They're trying to do a lot to cater to the format. Again, it's one of the most popular formats. It's sanctioned kitchen table Magic. It is the social Magic format. And with fewer paper events happening right now, it is what people are playing. Commander is more popular than ever, especially in today's global environment.
Yeah, that is definitely what they're doing. It makes a lot of sense because it's their most popular format, constructed format. They say the kitchen table is like the most popular seller still, but Commander, in terms of like the constructed formats, I know Mark Rosewater went on record and saying out of the constructed formats, Commander is by far the most popular. So it makes sense that they're aiming all their products to Commander players. Mm-hmm. But if you push too hard and you always have to make sure everything sells, and that means you always have to one up each one, or else like a new product comes out and it's like, oh, well, these cards aren't significantly better than the cards I already have. Yeah. So I'm not going to buy it as a Commander player. That puts you in a bad situation. So you always have to one up yourself to sell product. And that's going to lead to a lot of power creep. And, yeah. That's my scare. That's my fear.
Absolutely. And I'm right there with you again when they tread a design line between Standard and Commander, we get things like Companions, and that very clearly crossed a power level line. Mm-hmm. So shifting gears a little bit, for a man like yourself who brews as many decks as he does, how many personal decks do you have? I know that there are a few notable ones that people might know you for, but they're largely online, right? You don't play a whole lot of paper Magic.
I have 8 decks right now, paper decks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I went up a little bit because, it's quarantine time. So usually for most of the time that I've been playing Commander since the first precon came out, which I think is like 2011 or 2012.
Yes.
The first Commander precons. Zedru was my first deck. I still own a Zedru deck, by the way. As
I'm familiar.
Because we played in person on MTG Mudsta's channel, actually. So maybe
I'll link the video up here.
Yeah, in that place. So I still have a Zedru deck. But yeah, I used to have like 5 or so decks, and then recently I bought like 3 more just because it's like quarantine time, and I have a local game store that I would like to support. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy like some paper decks that I really like, and I still have to make like a Moonfolk deck. That's like the next one I'm gonna do. So like every month I just buy a new deck. So now I'm at like 8. Before I was at like 4. Now I'm at 8. Probably gonna be at 9 in a month. So yeah, it's going up.
Right on. And you mentioned Moonfolk. Everybody knows that it's your favorite tribe.
Best tribe. This is favorite tribe. I'm just spreading the good word, honestly.
And you've played it a couple of times now on Commander Clash.
Yes, I've perfected it.
And there are a few others that you've played a few times on Commander Clash, right? I think you might be famous or infamous for your 6 CMC tribal deck too.
Yes, that's actually the newest of my paper decks. Is I built a paper version of 6 CMC tribal. I'm still waiting for the last couple cards to show up in the mailbox, as again, like COVID and everything has caused some delays. I bought most of the stuff from my local game store, but then there was like a couple stuff like the Triomes. There was like a Zagoth Triome or something, Sultai Triome, and a couple other cards that are just sitting in the mail that I couldn't get from my local game store, so I bought from online, and it's been a little bit delayed. But yeah, it's basically done, and I'm very excited to actually play paper, maybe webcam, yes. In the near future for that one. It's awesome. It's fun.
And so someone like yourself who likes playing some of the same decks and continuing to tweak and evolve them, how does that deck building process look like to you? How do you take a deck that you've built and played and then refine?
Well, so I don't play a lot of paper Commander. First of all, most of my Commander games is just like Commander Clash. I do it once a week, so I get like my weekly Commander fill that way. Also, I just don't really play with too many people. I don't know. I just don't play too much paper Magic. So what happens is sometimes I'll go like months without playing my paper deck, and then some sets will come out in between, and then I'll just like be like, oh, I'm at my local game store. Here's some cards that I like, right, and they're gonna fit. So that's usually how I tweak them. Not playing them for a long time in between kind of lets me look at them with a fresh perspective when I go back to them. So like I looked at Zedru, like my Zedru deck, I was kind of unhappy with for like a year straight recently, where I was just not really happy with the win conditions, and I was looking at it and I was like, maybe I'll just throw an Insurrection as an easy way to win the game sometimes, but it didn't really feel thematic. So I sat on it for a while, and then M21 came out and I saw 9 lives, and I was like, wait a minute, I can donate this to somebody and then bounce it or destroy it, and they lose. That's the perfect win condition. Oh my God, now I'm going to update Zedru, which I haven't updated in like half a year, maybe a year. Suddenly I see that one card. I'm like, oh, I'm going to revisit this entire deck and see what else I want to update with it. So I look at the deck, I'm like, wait, this card doesn't make sense. This card doesn't make sense. I'm going to fix all this stuff. And yeah, so not looking at my deck for months on a time and then coming back and making severe changes to it. That's how I do it.
Great. And that fresh perspective really does open eyes. And a lot of people that have a lot of decks like playing a lot of them regularly, and they get really close to them. And that familiarity gives you the sense that there's nothing to tweak or tune about it. On the other hand, there are some people that play a deck so often that they're constantly making changes to it. It's interesting to see that you're of the opinion of the less you play a deck, the further you step away from the deck, the more you can see that can be changed or added to it.
Well, it's kind of like editing a script or editing like something that you wrote. If you write something, you can go back right after you write it and you just did it and you make some edits, but then you kind of like, you're kind of happy with it at that point and you sit on it. But if you sleep on it and you come back to that whatever you wrote in a while, you'll start seeing ways that you can optimize the way you wrote something, compress something, make something more concise, or you just did not like a paragraph, you cut that out, you reword it. So coming back with a fresh perspective is really helpful. But I mean, playing a bunch of games with a deck is a great way to figure out if something is consistently not working out as you hoped it would. And one trick that I used to have when I did play paper a lot, because I used to play a lot of paper Commander when I started writing about like budget Commander and all that stuff, is sometimes there would be cards that would be testing out. And I'd be like, all right, I could either have this card or this card in this slot, and I'm not sure which one. So I would like mark that card, and I would say like, all right, if this card was a land, like I'm playing, do I want 37 lands? Do I want 36 lands? I'm going to play like 100 games, and I'm going to see if this card was a land, would I have been happier if it was just a forest rather than that thing? Right. And you have to play a lot of games. You can't just be like sample size 2 and be like, oh, I got mana screwed 1 time, 2 times, and I guess I need more lands. Or like, oh, I got flooded, and I guess 30 lands is too much because I played 1 game and I got flooded. Yeah. You have to play a lot of games. But if you're like the type of person who like you religiously play Commander, maybe you meet with your play group like twice a week and you go at it for like 4 hours and you're playing with the same cards over and over again. After like a month, if you like tally it up and you mark one of your decks being like, if this card was X, would I have been happy with it? And each time you draw it, you see it, it's like, if this card was X, would I have been happy with it? And you keep like make a note of it, like write that down. Yes. Then that's a really great way to like figure stuff out by like a lot of data. But for me, I don't play a lot. So coming back with a fresh perspective is a quick way for me to kind of understand it. Fantastic. 2 excellent perspectives from you, Tomer. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I always disagree with myself. So let's get to our brew for today. You've got a theme or a card in particular that we're interested in brewing around. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it? Yes, I do. It is. Oh my goodness. You told me what the pronunciation was. So if I said it wrong, sorry.
It wouldn't be on brand if you said it right the first time.
What would Seth say in this situation? I wonder.
Right? He would say it 10 different times in the span of 30 minutes.
Yeah, okay. If I say it wrong, okay. So it's Neyith of the Dire Hunt. And if I said it wrong, it's because Seth told me, and I'm sticking to that story.
You got it right. Nayeth of the Dire Hunt is what we're looking at. This is a new rare legendary out of Jump Start. A very interesting one because she appears to be a mono green commander, but when you take a look at the text box, she's got a Gruul hybrid mana symbol in there. So just a quick update as to what Nayeth is, Nayeth is a 4 mana, and sorry, I'm just going to read off of this screen. Nayeth is a 4 mana 3/3 human warrior that reads, whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. And she's got a trigger on the beginning of combat. On your turn, you can pay 2 colorless and Gruul. So the Gruul hybrid system, either a green or a red. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn, just power. That creature must be blocked this combat if able. So she's got a lure trigger baked into her along with a power pump. Very interesting because there seems to be a lot of great ways to build Nayeth right off the bat. Is that what attracted you to Nayeth as a commander?
Oh yeah, absolutely. She has very powerful abilities. She has uncapped draw potential for just kind of doing what you want to do with the card. The card very much like screams, I want to do fighting, and I want to do attacking, and I want to force blocking. And if you do these things, you get to draw cards, which is the best. This is the best 3 words in Magic to say draw a card. Well, draw many cards is better than that, I guess. But it's uncapped. Like you don't have to pay mana for it. You don't have to do anything. You can do it. You can trigger this as many times as you want per turn. I mean, you still have to fight and have lots of blockers and whatnot. But it's very mana efficient. It draws you cards, which is exactly what you want, especially in like Gruul colors. And then her second triggered ability is incredibly powerful and kind of builds into her first ability. So it's a very powerful commander, and it also explores an archetype that, for the most part, hasn't had a lot of support. You don't really see a lot of commanders that scream at you, I want your creatures to be blocked, and I don't want to fight. Yeah. For fight, there's like the only 2 that I can think of, honestly, is for Werewolf Tribal, there's Ulrich of the Krallen Horde, which will fight one time, I think, when he flips or when he comes out. And then there's Tolsimir, Friend to Wolves, which is whenever a wolf enters the battlefield, that wolf can fight. So you could either do like Wolf Tribal, Werewolf Tribal. Both of those can have a fight mechanic in them, but they're kind of locked into tribes. And then Nayeth is the first commander that I believe kind of encourages fighting, rewards you for fighting, but isn't locked into a tribe or anything. You can just run whatever cards you want. As long as they fit the fight theme, you're good. You're golden.
Yes.
So that's really exciting that like Wizard of the Coast has given us a commander for an archetype that for up until this point was underexplored, and it's very powerful because it says draw cards. So obviously, like, it's good.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with one legendary creature here. You mentioned it a little bit when you spoke about power creep, but does this seem like one of those instances where previously you just see a commander that might say activated ability to double a creature's power, or have that triggered ability whenever a creature fights, draw a card, but to have all of this on one commander that can be in your command zone seems really powerful.
I think it's power creep, but it's in this particular situation, I think it's actually kind of good because you kind of want, if you want to explore a rather underdeveloped tribe like Fight Tribal, there's actually not a lot of payoff cards for the fight mechanic in Gruul. I know this because I made a budget commander on Werewolf Tribal before, and I tried to force a big Gruul theme, which there are cards for, but there's not a lot.
Right.
So when you need a commander for that archetype, I think it's more acceptable to have a card that's kind of pushed a little bit to kind of give that archetype a little bit of extra loving. A good example of this was the coin flip deck. There's never been a coin flip commander. Most of the coin flip cards are garbage. I mean, Carcassonne makes any coin flip card amazing.
Yes.
But then they came out in Battle Bond with the partners Zinder Split and Okon.
Yes.
As the very overpowered coin flip commanders. I've lost so many times to them because like when they go to their attack zone, you flip 1 billion coins and Okon just like one shots you and draws 1 billion cards. Very like stupidly powerful commanders, but they're supporting coin flips. So yeah, I'm kind of appreciative of the fact that they get pushed. Similar with Nayeth, it's not the biggest archetype. If this was Nayeth was showing up for like, I don't know, zombies or like
right.
dragons or vampires, and I'd be like, ugh,
if Nayeth was another beast to just support beast tribal, then it'd be a little overplayed. But I agree, this opens up some really cool archetypes to play with. That first ability, the more you fight or the more often you fight, each one of those, it turns every fight you do into a cantrip. And that first ability as well really wants you to go deep on an attacker, as emphasized by that activated ability, because if one or more creatures you control become blocked, then you draw a card. So you really want to be attacking with one large attacker each combat.
Yeah, the card definitely encourages a go tall, stompy archetype. And yeah, focusing on a single creature, because that's where you're going to be getting, you're capped on value basically on one creature. You can't like give multiple creatures double their power, and you can't draw more than one card for each like number of creatures that get blocked or fight. So yeah, focusing on one is good.
But at very least, with that ability, you can guarantee that you're drawing a card every combat phase.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a very, very efficient combat or card draw engine.
Excellent. For colors like Gruul, it's nice to have an efficient draw engine like that. Not that green needs any more help with drawing cards, right?
They're fine. This is good though. And also, I will say that like I do poo-poo like what I would call kind of lazy design, where it's like whenever you do insert thing that's really easy to do, draw a card and it's uncapped and everything, and you don't have to pay mana, you do it 1 billion times. This one is actually harder to like really abuse because it's only when it gets blocked or when it fights. Both of those two things are stuff that you kind of have to work at doing.
Right.
And it's not something that you can really easily like infinite combo. It's not like draw your entire deck and win the game some way. There might be ways to do that, but you're going to have to work a little bit for that. It's not that easy to do. So it's a nice card draw engine, but it's not as abusable as, say, Corvold, the Fake Curse, where it's like you sacrifice something all the time and you just draw all the cards. Or like Tatyova, you play a land, you draw all the cards, play all the lands, and just
draw all of the cards.
This one is like kind of capped, soft capped as like 1 or 2 cards per turn. You have to work for it too, though. And beyond that, if there are any combos, maybe there are, viewers, go ahead. Or if you know, I don't know, then you'd have to work a little bit harder for that. So I like this design a lot. It's push, powerful, but it's an archetype that could use the boost. So
yeah. So what springs to mind as cards to take advantage of in a Nayeth deck for you? What immediately top of mind?
Okay, so there are 2 cards that I consider are staples in the fight archetype. And I only know them off the top of my head because I wrote an article on werewolves and I put them in there. The first card, and I think is the best card, is Vigor. And I think it's like a 6/6 elemental from Lorwyn. And it says whenever another creature you control would take damage, you prevent that damage and you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. I did it off the top of my head, so I probably got some of the wording wrong.
I'll have a picture of it up down here.
yeah. So hopefully I'm right. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off my rocker here. But so the idea of this is that you have Vigor in play, and then you fight with a different creature, and all the damage that the creature would take while fighting is negated. It's prevented. And you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. So not only are you taking out the creature, and you have no worry if like both creatures are, if you have a 5/5 and you're fighting a 5/5, your creature's not going to die in the process. It's actually going to grow by getting like 5 +1/+1 counters is going to be a 10/10. And now it's even like stronger when it comes to fighting other creatures.
Right.
So Vigor is like top of the line in terms of fight support cards that I know of. And then there's one that is like specific to the fight mechanic. And it's called Foe Razor Regent. And this is a dragon from, I think, like Fate Reforged or the Khans of Tarkir block. And I think it's like 7 mana, 5/5 or something like that. And it says, when it enters the battlefield, Foe Razor Regent fights another creature. And then I think it's like at end of turn, if you fought with a creature, you put like, I think 2 +1/+1 counters on the creature. So it comes into play, it fights, and then it rewards you for fighting, like it fight for itself and fight for other creatures.
Yeah.
So that is the only card I think that specifically in Guru colors specifically calls out fight and gives you a reward for specifically fighting. And then Vigor is kind of just like more general.
Yeah, and there are a few cards that spring to mind for repeatable fight effects too, ways that we can continue to build off of the advantage of fighting over and over again. A couple of them are, of course, Ulvenwald Tracker, which is a staple. It's great removal in green, allows you to pay 2 and tap it to have a creature you control fight another creature. And in this case, it's fight another creature, essentially remove another creature and draw a card. That's just all of the value.
Very soft.
There's Contested Cliffs, which is a land that lets a beast you control fight another creature. Another great repeatable fight effect. And then there's the big one, the big fighty beast in Gruul Rage Beast, which is whenever another creature comes into play, fight it.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to fight over and over again. And in this case, draw a lot of cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Those cards are all key. And also something to consider with them is that they're all creatures. So Neyith wants you to run lots of creatures. These creatures themselves are creatures. I'm not wording it correctly. But the point is that a lot of the cards happen to be creatures, and you need creatures to fight, and you also need creatures for them to be blocked. So Gruul also has a really good support for Creatures Matter archetype. And another card that I found that was really useful for the werewolf version of Fight was Domri, Anarch of Bolas. And Domri not only was very efficient ramp, I think he did some other things. I'm actually going to type. Sure.
And just about all flavors of Domri have some kind of fight effect on them.
Yeah.
Too.
The first one is like, it could be card advantage, especially if you can manipulate the top card of your library. I think it's like if you reveal the top card of your library, if it's a creature, then you can put it into your hand. So it works very well with cards like Sylvan Library, works very well with Worldly Tutor effects, anything that can manipulate the top card of your library. I love Crop. There's like some Lorwyn card. It's an enchantment, 2 mana, and it's like cream of the crop. Cream of the crop. When you have like a creature enter the battlefield, you can like search your library. No, you look at X number of cards on top of your library, and then you can like put one at the top. So that's another way to like manipulate the top card of your library. So Domri works really well with that, but it also has that ability to fight if you need another fight mechanic. And then Domri, Anarch, or Bolas boosts your creatures, makes them uncounterable while you're ramping, and then also it fights. So again, you're kind of promoted, like these good fight engines happen to either be creatures, like you said with Ulvenwald Tracker and Gruul Rage Beast, but also there's like these planeswalkers that also highly promote you to have lots of creatures, give you stuff for having creatures, and they have fight mechanics tied to them. They're either ramp or they're card draw or there's some sort of utility that also gives you fight options too. So you're not like, oh no, I have all these fight cards in my hand. What am I going to do? I can't do anything with them. You have like these flexible fight cards that are like, oh, I can fight if I need to, but I can also draw cards. I can also ramp. I can also do these things, but fight is always there. So the flexibility cards too are really useful to this archetype.
Right. And you raised a fantastic point there too. There is an opportunity cost to running cards that do nothing but fight. And that is if your opponents have no creatures, or if you have no creatures, they don't do anything. If you're looking to recover from a wrath, or if your opponents are playing a more control style deck, then you're really going to struggle to play some of those cards. So you do need a versatility in there. One thing to note, it is whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, meaning that it doesn't have to necessarily be when a creature you control fights a creature you don't control. So there are some opportunities for you to fight your own creatures, for there to be some infighting with your creatures. And that brings up a card that springs to my mind from M21, the new Brash Taunter.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a great way to turn fight, which is a creature to creature damage source, to a damage source that can hit your opponent's life total.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's probably one of the best cards in the entire deck. Like you said, some cards are going to just be blanks in your hand because the fight mechanic does require, like, if you're trying to use it offensively, you do need opposing creatures to actually do anything. Mm-hmm. And like you said, if you're against a control deck or a combo deck that just isn't giving you the opportunity to fight or even have blockers, then you're not going to get a lot of value with these cards and they're going to be sitting in your hand. And then, like you said, Brash Taunter is like the best card because you could just fight against it. You could grow with like Razor Regent. You could do all this stuff, and you're pinging people. Like you're advancing your board state. You're dealing damage and all that stuff, and you're getting good use out of your fight cards too. So flexible fight cards, and also like Brash Taunter. I know a weaker version of that is there's like a Voodoo Totem or something.
Stuffy Doll.
Stuffy Doll, that's the one. It's not as good as Brash Taunter, but it has a similar effect. It will be burning basically one targeted opponent, but it's also indestructible. It's also a good target to have on the battlefield to get more value out of your fight cards if you can't, kill an opposing creature.
Right, and if you're staring down a lot of damage-based or destruction-based wrath effects, then these creatures are indestructible. Brash Taunter, Stuffy Doll, they're going to stick around and they're going to ensure that you can survive after a wrath so that you can rebuild. Perfect. We've talked about some creatures. We've talked about fighting. Let's talk about that second ability from Nayeth. That double a power ability plus a built-in lure effect. That seems really strong to me too. Like you said, you want to go really tall on your combat phases, which to me screams doing something like keyword soup, where you want to make sure that your creatures either have or get additional abilities. Things like double strike or trample, ways that they can still be blocked but still get through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially if you're trying to use this creature offensively to take out creatures, like forcing them to have a blocker, then trample is like the ideal way. You take a big creature that has trample, and then you force like a little creature to block it.
Yes.
You take out a utility creature, and you're still doing a ton of damage in the process. So I think that's the max value. It's like a really important card to keep in mind of. One good way of ensuring that for most of your creatures, at least, running Brawn. It's a creature. It's like a 3/3 trample. But the really interesting part is if it's in your graveyard, and I think if you have a forest, then all creatures you control have trample. Similarly, Anger is also really good too. It's in the graveyard. Your creatures have haste, so you can immediately attack, and then your creatures can immediately block, and then you can immediately draw cards. So those two cards are really, really good in Gruul, especially when you're in red, where you have all these cards that can loot, like Faithless Looting, Cathartic Reunion, and stuff that you probably want to be running anyway for like card selection. But then you can also dump Anger and Brawn into your graveyard, and now your creatures are that much better synergized with Nayeth.
Absolutely. A few weeks ago on the channel, we did a tune-up on a Stonebrow Krozen Hero Trample Tribal deck. Which is really interesting. I saw the list and I immediately thought it was right up your alley. I'll link it up here for anybody that hasn't had a chance to see it yet. But there are a good 6 or 7 ways to give all of your creatures trample, or give all of your creatures haste, and give them more utility like we want. A great way to give them haste is with Rhythm of the Wild. out of Ravnica, the latest Ravnica block. It not only makes your creatures uncounterable, but gives them Riot, which can either make them bigger if we aren't looking to attack with them right away, or give them haste so that they can hit the ground running. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just a good utility and makes blue players cry. So
right.
Everybody likes that.
Absolutely. I think that's everybody's goal in Commander is to make the blue player cry just a little bit.
Absolutely.
So that activated ability from Neyith reminds me of another creature that's commonly helming Gruul decks, and that is Xenagos, God of Revels. That is a very similar triggered ability from that god. That at the beginning of combat on your turn, a creature you control gets double power and haste until end of turn. I think that these two really go hand in hand. It would be a good inclusion to have Xenagos in a deck like this.
As somebody who owned a Xenagos deck up until I think the last time I played it was we were meeting up actually. Yeah, I played it with I don't know. I don't think I played it with you. I remember playing it against a Marin of Clan Neltoth player.
Right.
It was a Spore Frog, and it made me sad. But eventually I got there with Malignus. And speaking of Malignus, actually, I think Malignus is really good here because Malignus's power and toughness is equal to, I think, like target opponent, like the highest life total of target opponent. So it's always going to be, it's never going to one shot a person. It's going to it's going to half shot a person,
right?
Basically, because it's going to be half the size. So if you have an opponent with 40 life total, it will be a 20-20. Again, well, if there's an opponent, there's that 20 life, and they can die.
Yes.
But it's never going to take out the highest life total opponent. However, Nayeth's ability is very similar to Xenagos' ability, which is why Malignus is so good in Xenagos, is you can pay 3 mana, and if you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. So suddenly, Malignus's power is equal to the highest opponent's life total.
Yes.
Which is very, very scary.
Intimidating.
If you're anybody who's an opponent of you right now. So
perfect.
It'd be fun.
And that's a great point. And not only do we want to make sure that we're making those attacking creatures bigger, but we want to make sure that they're getting through for as much as possible. We talked about Trample, but the other one that there's a lot of opportunity for is Double Strike. And there's an enchantment in particular called Blood Mist, I believe it's called. It's an enchantment that at the beginning of combat, a creature you control gains Double Strike. So now you've got ideally a creature that needs to be blocked, is twice as large, and now has Double Strike too. You add Trample in on top of that, and you are easily chunking opponents' life totals.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another card that I very much enjoyed in the Xenagos deck. So actually, at this point, I would highly recommend, if you're looking for more ideas for building Nayeth, there's a lot of overlap between Xenagos, God of Revels. So if you've seen decks that are Xenagos decks, maybe you want to look over those cards as well.
Great.
Overlap with Ulrich too. So there's a lot of pools of even though there's not a lot of people who have built Nayeth decks in particular yet that you can look for. I think I looked at EDH Rec a little bit ago, but there's 45 deck submissions right now. There's not a lot to glean off that. But there's a lot of submissions for Xenagos, God of Revels. There's a lot of submissions for Ulrich. You can kind of pick and choose some inspiration from those decks because there is a lot of overlap there. So like you said, Blood Mist, fantastic card. Sure enough, it's fantastic with anything that can focuses on a stompy single card, single creature attack idea. And it's in Gruul. So
absolutely. And again, deck building is a collaborative exercise. Never feel like you need to go on your own and reinvent the wheel. Take inspiration from other people's. You don't need to recreate a deck from scratch. You can always take a look at what's used in similar archetypes, in similar decks with similar commanders, and build a deck to your own flavor. There's going to be one more Nayeth deck in EDH Rec once we're done with today's show too. Tomer, I really wanted to thank you for coming out and talking deck building with us. I think that we've got a great start for a Nayeth deck. I'll make sure that we've got a deck list and some details right after we're done. But Tomer, why don't you remind everybody where we can find you?
Man, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. So where you can find me. MTG Goldfish is where I write twice a week-ish, kind of, usually. At least once a week. So Commander Clash, Fridays. Budget Commander is usually either Tuesday or Thursday, depending on the schedule. And then otherwise, you can catch me on Twitter, where I post a lot of random stuff there. So at Budget Commander, and that's basically it. I think it's MTG Goldfish and Twitter. I might be missing something. Sometimes I stream on Twitch, usually not though. I'll try to stream a little bit more.
Awesome. That's great, Tomer. Once again, thank you very much for coming out. Really do appreciate having you here. And hopefully, if you've got a webcam set up, maybe we can play some Paper Magic sometime.
I am still figuring out how to do the whole webcam-y thingy. I ordered a stand for the webcam.
Great.
I tried tilting it down, just like it's attached to my monitor right now. Tried tilting it down, did not work. But with the stand, hopefully, maybe I can get some games in. I have like 6 CMT Tribal almost ready, waiting for a couple cards. And then I'm really, really excited to play it. And we'll see when Moonfolk makes its return.
Awesome. So. Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Tomer. Thank you, everybody. Let's take a look at our Nayeth deck list. And here's our Neyith of the Dire Hunt deck. Tomer and I put together a deck that focuses on 2 things that Neyith does well: fighting and going big. We included a lot of power matters cards and a lot of good reusable fight effects. You can see here that our curve is a little bit higher, but that's because we're including some good ramp in here. We're taking advantage of green's strengths. Additionally, a lot of our high-powered cards can have their casting costs reduced, which is a big benefit. We can get them out a lot sooner. We've got some real game enders in here and some sweet combos. I look forward to seeing how well this deck can do in the future. I want to once again thank Tomer for coming out, and I want to thank all of you for watching Let's Do a Brew. Again, I want to remind you that we've got our Patreon set up at patreon.com/cmdrmechanic. Your support helps us do more. Thank you very much, and until next time, good luck and have fun.